The static hiss of the Vox was the first sound to greet us as we docked with the drifting freighter Merciful Saint. I had expected silence, the kind of hollow absence that clings to derelicts like frost. But instead there was music. It was faint at first, a delicate thread woven into the static, so subtle I thought it was my imagination. Then the thread resolved into something unmistakable. A lullaby. A child's lullaby. My breath caught as the melody slid through the con bead in my ear. Lilting and soft, like a mother singing her babe to sleep. Impossible. The Merciful Saint's crew had been declared lost weeks ago. No life signs, no survivors, nothing but a drifting coffin orbiting the dead world of Gethsemane. I glanced at the men and women of my detachment, the Night Watch. Their expressions were grim, impassive behind frost-rimed visors. They had heard it too. None of us spoke. We didn't need to. In the Imperium there are rules of reality, and we all knew one had just been broken. The ship loomed before us, its hull blackened and cracked from some unknown trauma. There were no functioning docking ports, so we cut our way in, leg boots clanging as we entered through a ragged tear in the plating. The air inside was bitterly cold, a freezing mist curling from our breath. Frost clung to the walls in delicate filigrees, and beneath it, a thin layer of black ash coated every surface. My boots left prints that were instantly erased as the ash seemed to shift, almost like it was breathing. We advanced in silence, weapons at the ready. My auspex flickered with static. Vox channels were unstable, voices warping into distorted echoes. The lullaby faded, replaced by scraps of reversed liturgical prayers that bled through like corrupted machine spirits trying to speak. The sound was wrong, the rhythm off by fractions, enough to raise the hair on the back of my neck. Megar Strix, our attached tech priest, muttered Binharic blessings as his mechadendrites probed an open panel. His voice was metallic and flat, almost lost in the whispering static. Systems degraded, logs fragmented, data corruption extensive. As we pushed deeper into the freighter, the corridors grew narrower, the light dimmer. Our helmet lamps cut tunnels through the darkness, illuminating murals scrawled in ash along the bulkheads. Crude shapes, mouths wide and screaming, drawn over and over again. Private Lauren gagged, "Emperor preserve us." Quiet, I hiss. My own voice sounded too loud in the frozen silence. We reached what had once been a crew compartment. Bunks lined the walls like tombs. The smell hit first, a sour metallic tang that coated the tongue. Then the beam of my lamp caught a shape fused into the bulkhead. It had once been a man. Now it was part of the ship. Flesh and metal melded together in an obscene union. His mouth open in a silent scream. Frost rhymed his hollow eye socket. At first glance I thought his lips were moving. But no, it was the ash. The black dust around his mouth shifted in sync with the faint vibrations beneath our boots. The lullaby returned, so close it felt as though it was being sung directly into my skull. I froze. My breath caught. The voice was no longer distant or distorted. It was alive. Behind me someone whimpered. Another muttered a prayer. Drix's mechadendrites rattled as he frantically scanned the corpse, his Binharic cant rising in pitch. No, no, this is not possible, not sanctioned, not real. I approached the fused body slowly, weapon raised. The song swelled impossibly loud in my ears. My vision blurred, and for a heartbeat, I saw a child's shadow standing beside the corpse, tiny hands clutching at the man's uniform. Then it was gone, leaving only frost and darkness. The Vox crackled violently, a burst of static split the air, and then a whisper, clear and unmistakable, slid through the comms. It spoke my name, Severin. The sound rooted me to the spot. My heart slammed against my ribs. No one aboard this ship should know me. No one alive should speak that name in this void. Severin. It whispered again, softer this time, almost coaxing. Around me my squad shifted uneasily. Private Lauren's visor snapped toward mine. "Sir, did you hear?" The lights flickered and died. Total darkness swallowed us. In the blackness the lullaby resumed, louder than ever, wrapping around us like a shroud. The voice sang of sleep, of warmth, of home, of surrender. And for one terrifying moment, I wanted nothing more than to close my eyes and obey. The darkness pressed in, absolute and suffocating. My helmet lamp sputtered, flared, then steadied, throwing stark cones of light across the corridor. The others followed suit, beams lancing through the void like thin blades. The lullaby did not fade with the light's return. It only shifted, growing softer, more insidious, as though retreating deeper into the walls themselves. Check status, I ordered, forcing authority into my tone. My voice sounded too sharp, too brittle, like glass ready to shatter. One by one my squad responded, all present, all accounted for. Relief flickered through me, brief and fragile. Then Private Lauren's voice cracked over the vox. Sir, Private Corder's Auspex reading just dropped to 0 for a second, like he vanished off the grid. Corder's helmet snapped to Pord Lauren, his voice defensive. I'm right here, damn it. No, Lauren stammered. Not physically, like you ceased to exist, just for a heartbeat. Megas Drix turned his sensor array toward the bulkhead, mechadendrites twitching like nervous fingers. Binary cants spilled from his vox grill, layered and harsh. Anomaly detected. Environmental stability compromised. Recommend immediate withdrawal to safe perimeter. I considered it. Emperor knows I considered it. But orders were orders, and abandoning a mission without confirmation of threat classification was heresy. I motioned forward. We continue. Stay tight, eyes open. As we moved, the ship seemed to twist around us. Corridors bent subtly, as though the geometry itself resisted our presence. Once I glanced back and saw the corridor behind us look different than before. The angle of a bulkhead wrong, too sharp, like a jagged tooth. Drix muttered a litany of stability under his breath, his mechanical voice trembling. This vessel is not merely derelict, it is resonating with what? I asked, keeping my voice low. He hesitated, a pause heavy with dread, with memory. The words sank into me like ice. We reached a junction where 3 passageways met. The left corridor was collapsed, blocked by twisted steel. The right sloped downward into darkness. The center passage hummed faintly, a barely perceptible vibration under our boots. There, Drix said, pointing a mechadendrite toward the center. Signal strength increasing, source proximity rise. The squad moved cautiously, boots crunching on the brittle layer of frost and ash. The lullaby wove in and out of the static, sometimes clear, sometimes warped into a keening wail. It was maddeningly familiar. I caught myself humming under my breath before I realized what I was doing. My blood went cold. I hadn't heard this song since childhood, and my mother had never taught it to me. Sir, Corporal Var hissed. You hear that? It's personal. I nodded slowly. Keep your minds guarded. Recite the Catechism of Steel if you must. Don't let the sound inside. The corridor opened into what had once been a medbay. The walls were slick with condensation, as if the ship itself were sweating. Medical tables lay overturned, tools scattered like bones. Lauren moved ahead, scanning with his Auspex. Readings are. He cut off abruptly. What is it? I asked. They're gone, he whispered. Who's gone? Their life signs, he said, voice shaking. Corporal Drake and Specialist Hullen. They were right behind us. We spun in unison, lights slicing through the darkness. The corridor was empty. No sign of a struggle, no sound of retreating footsteps, only a small, neat stack of lasguns on the deck, placed with deliberate care. The lullaby surged, louder now, layered with static. Formation, I barked. Defensive circle now. Drix's mechadendrites whipped through the air as he interfaced with a wall terminal, attempting to trace their last positions. Data corrupted, looping. What does it mean? Lauren demanded. Before Drix could answer, a burst of corrupted vox chatter filled our comms. Fragments of liturgical hymns twisted backward and overlapping. Beneath it, a new pattern emerged. Binary code, repeating endlessly. Drix's voice dropped to a low monotone as he translated. A location deeper within the vessel. The humming beneath our feet grew stronger, pulsing in time with our own heartbeats. My breath came faster, fogging my visor. We follow it, I said, even as dread clawed at my gut. We find our missing men. We end this. Var hesitated. Sir, what if they didn't vanish? What if they joined whatever's singing? The lullaby cut out mid-note, leaving a void so profound it hurt my ears. Then a whisper, soft and perfectly clear, slithered through the vox. Severin, it said, come to me. And the lights ahead flickered, revealing a sealed bulkhead door marked with the sigils of a chapel deck. The mark was ancient, scorched and half erased, but the shape of a stylized mouth remained visible beneath the grind. The whisper became a low hum, as if the ship itself were drawing breath, waiting for us to enter. The bulkhead loomed before us like a monolithic barrier, its surface marred by scorch marks and centuries of grime. The faded sigil of an open mouth glared back at us, half buried beneath layers of ash and rust. My breath sounded loud in my helmet as I studied it, a harsh rasp that made me feel suddenly exposed, like prey caught in a predator's sight. The humming beneath our boots deepened, vibrating up through my bones in a way that felt uncomfortably like a heartbeat. "Drix," I said quietly. "Open it." The tech priest's mechadendrites whirred as he interfaced with the ancient locking mechanism. His voice slipped into Benharic cant, a metallic litany that overlapped with the low ever-present hum. The harmony between the two sounds was unsettling, as though the ship was singing back to him. "There is resistance," Drix murmured. "The lock does not wish to be opened." "It doesn't get a choice," I said, raising my weapon. My squad shifted behind me, forming a defensive wedge, their movements sharp and precise despite the fear I could taste radiating from them. With a final grinding groan, the bulkhead split down the center, opening like the jaws of some colossal beast. A wave of air rolled out, thick with the scent of old incense and something far fouler, sweet, cloying rot that clung to the back of the throat. Our helmet lamps swept across the space beyond, revealing a vast chamber that stretched upward into darkness. The floor was a mosaic of cracked ceramite tiles, their patterns obscured by ash. At the center stood an altar of black stone, and upon it lay rows of human jawbones arranged in precise geometric shapes. They formed patterns that seemed to shift when viewed from different angles, defying logic and stability. Lauren gagged audibly. "Emperor's mercy, what kind of chapel is this?" Var's voice was a harsh whisper, a heretical one. We advanced slowly, the silence oppressive, save for the rhythmic hum that now seemed to pulse in time with our own breath. The walls were lined with statues of robed figures, their faces worn smooth as if by countless reverent touches or deliberate erasure. Their headless forms loomed like judges presiding over our trespass. Drix knelt by the altar, his mechadendrites twitching furiously as he scanned the bone arrangements. "These are not random," he said, voice reverent and horrified all at once. "Each position corresponds to a Benharic subreme. This is a language made of bones," Var muttered. "That's not language. That's madness. Madness and design are not mutually exclusive," Drix replied. His monotone wavered slightly. "This is communication." As he spoke, I became aware of a subtle change in the chamber. The humming was no longer confined to the floor. It was in the walls, the statues, the very air. The sound vibrated in my teeth and skull, making it hard to think. I realized with a start that the hum was following a pattern, as though responding to our movements, adapting to our presence. "Sir," Lauren said, his voice trembling, "do you hear that? It's forming words." I strained to listen. He was right. Beneath the steady vibration was a cadence, a rhythm, like breath shaping syllables. It was almost familiar, though I couldn't place it. "Stay focused," I ordered. "Eyes up, weapons ready." We moved deeper into the chamber, and the statues seemed to close in, their blank faces catching the edges of our light beams. My heartbeat quickened. The air was growing warmer, the temperature rising inexplicably the further we went. Beads of condensation formed inside my visor, clouding my vision. The hum stopped. The sudden silence was so absolute it felt like a physical blow. My ears rang in its absence. The squad froze, breaths held. Then from somewhere deep within the darkness above us, a single note sounded. It was a voice, soft, human, singing a lullaby. The same lullaby we had heard through the vox, now impossibly close, intimate and fragile, like a mother singing to a child cradled against her chest. The sound slid down my spine like cold water, every instinct screaming at me to run, to hide, to fight. Lauren whimpered, "It's here. Emperor, save us. It's here with us." I raised a hand for silence, though my own pulse thundered in my ears. The voice did not echo. It didn't need to. It was everywhere, filling the chamber from every direction. Private Ryan, the youngest of my squad, staggered forward, his weapon slipping from numb fingers. His lips moved, and to my horror, the lullaby emerged from his throat in perfect harmony with the unseen singer. "Restrain him," I shouted. Var lunged, grappling Ryan as the boy convulsed. His eyes rolled back until only the whites showed, his body jerking as if unseen strings controlled him. Drix's mechadendrites clamped down on his skull, scanning furious. "He is broadcasting," Drix said, disbelief creeping into his mechanical tone. "Multiple frequencies. The pattern is identical to Vox encryption sequences." Ryan's scream shattered the air, as his back arched unnaturally. Then, just as suddenly, he went limp for a heartbeat. None of us moved. The only sound was the faint rattle of ash shifting across the tiles. Then the lullaby stopped mid-note. The silence that followed was worse. Slowly, inexorably, the bone patterns on the altar began to rearrange themselves, moving with a dry, rattling wisp. And somewhere in the darkness above, something enormous shifted, breathing in time with our own. The rattling of the bones grew louder, like teeth chattering in the cold, yet the chamber was stiflingly warm now. My armor felt heavy, suffocating, as if the air itself were pressing inward. I tried to step back, but my boots seemed rooted to the floor. Var swore under his breath, dragging Ryan's limp form away from the altar. The young soldier's lips still moved, whispering the lullaby, even though no sound came out. His chest rose and fell with a rapid, unnatural rhythm, like he was breathing to a beat only he could hear. "Magus, what's happening to him?" I demanded. Drix's mechadendrites hovered frantically over Ryan's skull, scanners emitting urgent pulses of red light. "His brainwave activity is fracturing," Drix rasped, his mechanical voice faltering. "Multiple overlapping patterns. Some match Imperial encryption codes, others I do not recognize." He hesitated, then added, "It is as though he has become a transmitter." Before I could respond, a wave of dizziness struck me. My vision blurred, the statues around the room swimming like figures seen through water. A dull, rhythmic pulse filled my head, too steady to be my own heartbeat. Then, without warning, the world tilted sideways. I blinked, and I was no longer in the chapel. The corridor stretched before me, lit by flickering emergency lights. My boots left prints in fresh ash that hadn't been there moments ago. At the far end of the hall I saw myself. It wasn't a reflection, it was me, walking with my weapon lowered, face bare and expression blank. Around me, my squad moved silently, their movements stiff, mechanical. I shouted, but my voice made no sound. My other self turned his head slowly toward me, and in perfect unison, every soldier mirrored the motion. Their mouths opened, releasing a hiss of black ash that streamed upward like smoke. A hand gripped my shoulder hard. I stumbled back into reality, gasping. Drix stood before me, his optics flickering wildly. "Lieutenant, focus. You fell into microsleep." I stared at him, disoriented. "I saw. You dreamed," he interrupted sharply. "But this is no ordinary sleep. This place induces involuntary episodes. The boundary between perception and reality is thinning." Behind us, Lauren let out a strangled scream. We turned to see him standing rigid, eyes wide, his weapon clattering to the floor. He swayed, murmuring, I was walking the same corridor. I could feel the ash between my teeth." Var grabbed his shoulders, shaking him. "Snap out of it, soldier." Even as Var shouted, the layout of the chapel seemed to shift. The statues were closer than before, their featureless faces looming in a way that made my skin crawl. The tiles beneath our feet warped subtly, angles no longer aligned. I realized with dawning horror that the room itself was changing when unobserved. "Sir," Drix said, his voice mechanical yet edged with panic, "time registers on our systems are desynchronizing. Each device reports a different hour." The hum returned abruptly, louder than before. The jawbones on the altar rattled violently, then went still. At that exact moment, Ryan convulsed and screamed. It was a raw, animal sound that froze every one of us in place. His back arched so far I heard vertebrae crack. Then he collapsed, chest heaving. Something dark and granular poured from his mouth. At first, I thought it was vomit. Then I saw it wasn't liquid at all. It was ash, black, fine ash spilling in a steady stream, piling on the cracked tiles. The mound grew rapidly, humming softly, as if the ash itself was alive. Var staggered back, crossing himself. "Emperor preserve us. Hold formation," I barked, though my voice shook. My weapon tracked the growing mound. Drix extended a mechadendrite toward it, scanning furiously. "Unprecedented readings," he muttered, his monotone rapid and clear. "The ash is emitting rhythmic pulses. Binary. A message." "What kind of message?" I demanded. His optics flared. "A warning. It says,
Do not wake her. The words settled over the squad like a pall. Even through the terror clawing at me, I sensed the the humming, the singing, the dreams. It was all building towards something still asleep. Ryan's body jerked suddenly, his mouth opening in a silent wail. The ash mound shuddered in response, the hum rising in pitch. Then the temperature plummeted. Frost raced across the floor, creeping over our boots. My visor fogged instantly, and the air tasted of iron. Lauren grabbed my arm, panic raw in his voice. "Sir, we need to leave, now." I hesitated, torn between duty and survival. The ash mound began to spread, thin tendrils snaking across the tiles like roots seeking soil. Each tendril pulsed in time with the lullaby, which had returned so faintly it seemed to come from inside my own skull. "We move," I said finally, forcing steel into my voice. "Fall back to the junction, Drix. Collect what data you can." As we turned to retreat, I glanced back at Ryan. His body was crumpled beside the altar, still twitching. His lips moved once more, forming a single silent word, "Mother." The chamber lights flickered violently. Then from somewhere deep beneath the deck, something vast exhaled, and the entire ship seemed to breathe with it. The deck vibrated beneath our boots as if something deep within the ship had shifted, stretching itself away. Frost cracked loudly across the bulkheads, webbing outward like shattered glass. The temperature plunged further, each breath a plume of mist inside my visor. The ash on the floor writhed, scattering in concentric circles around the mound as though fleeing from something beneath. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but I forced my voice steady. "Move, back to the junction, now." Val and Lauren dragged Ryan's limp body between them, his limbs twitching involuntarily. Drix scuttled alongside, mechadendrites lashing through the air, his Ben Herrick cants rising to a near hysterical pitch. My own legs felt like lead, as if gravity itself was growing heavier with each step. Behind us, the altar collapsed with a sound like bones snapping, releasing a deep guttural resonance. The jawbones scattered across the tiles, rattling and clattering, forming strange spirals before dissolving back into ash. The lullaby returned, distant at first, then building in volume until it seemed to come from everywhere at once. The voices multiplied, weaving together into a warped choir that shifted between tenderness and fury. We reached the junction, only to find the path we'd entered through was no longer there. The corridor had folded inward, bulkheads twisting like molten wax, leaving a seamless wall of metal and frost. Throne's blood. Var gasped, backing away. "It's sealing us. It's reconfiguring itself," Drix corrected, his voice jittering as his system struggled to process the changes. "The architecture responds to stimuli." Lauren whirled on him. "You mean it's alive?" "Alive is insufficient terminology." Drix, his optics pulsed brighter. "It is reactive, dreaming." Before I could demand clarification, the lights flickered and dimmed, plunging us into near darkness. Emergency lumens glowed faintly in the distance, pulsing like a hot. The vox crackled violently, fragments of reversed prayers and static slicing through. Then, abruptly, a clear binary tone emerged, precise and deliberate. Drix froze mid-step. Translation incoming. His mechadendrites hovered in the air, as streams of data flowed into his system. Message reads, "Do not wake her." A cold sweat prickled beneath my armor. "Her?" I echoed. "The entity?" Before Drix could answer, Ryan screamed. The sound was raw, ragged, his voice breaking as he thrashed against Var's grip. His eyes snapped open, pupils blown wide until there was nothing but blackness. "She's listening," he wailed, his tone shifting between voices, his own, then a child's, then a guttural basso that rattled my visor. "She knows you're here. She knows." His mouth froze mid-scream. Slowly, he turned his head to look directly at me. "Severin," he whispered, perfectly calm now, "you'll make a fine first dream." I shoved down the chill crawling through my veins. "Val, restrain him fully. Sedate if you must." As Val complied, Drix's systems spiked wildly. He staggered, mechanical limbs flailing as though struck, external signals merging with internal processes. He gasped. "The ship's machine spirit is not isolated. It's merging with something external. No firewall, no separation." Lauren's voice "What does that mean for us?" Drix's optics locked on mine. "It means it knows where you are." Before we could respond, the deck shuddered violently, nearly throwing us to the ground. Alarms wailed, then cut off mid-tone, replaced by the sound of a heartbeat impossibly loud and slow. The entire ship vibrated in sync with it. I activated my comms broadcasting a distress signal. Only static answered. Then a voice slid through the channel, soft and intimate. "Severin." I froze. The voice was my mother's. "Come home," it crooned. "Come." I killed the channel. Heart hammering. "It's in our box," I snarled. "Drix, shut it out." Attempting isolation protocols, he rasped. His Ben Herrick chant escalating. Sparks leapt from his mechadendrites as he fought the invasive signal. Lauren suddenly dropped to his knees, clutching his head. "Sir?" "The song. It's in my mind. I can see it." His scream built to a piercing wail before cutting off abruptly. He collapsed trembling. Eyes rolled back white. Val swore, dragging him back. "He's alive, but unresponsive." Before I could issue orders, Private Keller stepped forward, moving with eerie calm. Blood streamed down his forearms, where he had carved deep, jagged symbols into his flesh with his combat knife. His face was serene, almost blissful. "Keller," I snapped, "stand down, that's an order." He smiled faintly and spoke in a voice that was not entirely his own. "She calls to me. She calls to all of us." He raised his blade and began etching another mark into his chest, speaking in a strange, rhythmic chant. The words were alien, yet they resonated in my bones like an ancient prayer. Drix's optics flared in alarm. "Those are coordinates," he hissed. "Planetary coordinates. He is broadcasting a destination." The heartbeat sound intensified, shaking the bulkhead. Frost fell in sheets from the ceiling. Keller's chanting grew louder, until his voice cracked. Then, with a sudden, decisive motion, he slit his own throat. Blood sprayed across the tiles in an arc that sizzled as it hit the freezing air. His body crumpled, twitching once before going still. The lullaby surged, deafening now, filling every space within the ship. Through the cacophony, Keller's last word echoed in perfect clarity. "Mother." The deck dropped beneath us like a collapsing lung, and somewhere deep in the bowels of the vessel, something vast began to move toward the surface. The deck groaned beneath us, a deep, resonant sound that felt less like metal and more like something alive drawing breath. I steadied myself against the bulkhead, the cold of it biting through my armor. Keller's blood still steamed where it had splashed across the frost-coated tiles, the strange sigils carved into his flesh glowing faintly as though lit from within. The air was dense, oppressive, and every inhale carried the taste of copper and ash. "Form up," I barked, my voice sharp to keep the panic from setting in. "We're moving deeper. Whatever this is, we end it now." No one argued, though fear radiated from the squad in palpable ways. Val and Lauren lifted Ryan between them, the young soldier limp and unresponsive, save for occasional spasms that rippled through his lips. Drix moved ahead, mechadendrites twitching like a nest of serpents, his metallic chanting layering over the distant hum that now throbbed constantly in the background. The path forward sloped downward into a narrow maintenance shaft. It reeked of burned oil and something sweetly rotten. Lights flickered fitfully along the walls, casting shadows that bent at odd angles, as if reluctant to follow the shape of reality. As we descended, the air grew warmer and heavier, each breath a labor. My visor fogged, blurring my vision, until I could only see by the dim glow of emergency lumens. The deeper we went, the clearer the sound became. The hum had evolved into a faint melody, low and mournful. It was a lullaby still but stripped of warmth, now a dirge that spoke of endings rather than rest. With every step, it seemed to vibrate through my bones, through the very structure of the ship. Val's voice cracked over the vox. "Sir, this doesn't feel like we're heading to a lower deck. It feels like," he hesitated, then swallowed, "like we're descending into something's throat." "Keep your mind clear," I snapped, though the same thought had occurred to me. "It's architecture, nothing more." But even I didn't believe that anymore. The shaft opened suddenly into a vast chamber, and my breath caught. The space was impossibly large, far beyond what the ship's schematics had shown. Towering columns rose like rib bones to meet an unseen ceiling lost in darkness. The floor stretched out before us, uneven and glistening, covered in a thin sheen of moisture that gleamed under our light. And everywhere there were skeletons. They were arranged in seated rows, like a cathedral choir frozen mid-hymn. Each skull's jaw was forced open to an unnatural width, the bone fractured and warped as if from extreme pressure. They faced the far end of the chamber where a massive altar-like structure loomed, its surface covered in more of those shifting jawbone patterns.
Loran whimpered, tightening his grip on Ryan. Emperor's Light. This is a tomb. Drix corrected, his voice a trembling monotone. This is a choir. As if on cue, the humming deepened, and the skeletal jaws began to rattle in perfect unison. The sound rose gradually, transforming into the unmistakable cadence of a lullaby sung by countless voices. The squad faltered, hands clamping over helmets as if that could block the noise. I fought the urge to scream, forcing my mind to focus. Weapons ready, I shouted, though the words sounded distant, drowned beneath the rising song. The walls themselves began to move, subtle vibrations rippling outward like a living organism. The stone-like material pulsed faintly, and I realized with growing horror that the chamber wasn't built to contain the choir. It was the choir. Every surface resonated, every vibration calculated to shape the sound. The melody twisted without warning, turning harsh and discordant. My vision blurred, and for a heartbeat I saw shapes moving behind the walls, colossal silhouettes, shifting and writhing as if trapped within some vast membrane. Drix staggered, his mechadendrites flailing wildly. Warp energy breach, he screeched, his usually calm voice breaking into static. Reality boundaries compromised. We are inside a living conduit to the Immaterium. The very air thickened, becoming a tangible force pressing against us. Var screamed over the vox, dropping to one knee as blood streamed from his nose. Loran collapsed entirely, clutching his head as if trying to claw something out of his mind. I forced myself forward, every step like wading through viscous liquid. Drix, shut it down. There is no shutdown, the tech priest wailed. This is not machinery. It is liturgy made flesh. The song rose to a fever pitch, and the skeletons moved, not as individuals, but together, their jaws snapping open and shut in perfect rhythm, creating an unbearable clattering that merged with the lullaby. Then came the moment that shattered whatever fragile sanity we still held. The altar shifted, and for an instant the veil between dimensions tore. I saw something vast and formless pressing against the barrier, its presence so immense it dwarfed the entire ship. It had no eyes, no face, yet somehow I felt it looking directly at me. It opened its non-existent mouth and sang. The sound bypassed my ears entirely, vibrating through every cell of my body. Images flooded my mind, battlefields, hives, planets, all cradled in a darkness that pulsed like a heartbeat. I saw infants screaming in their cribs, only to fall silent as the lullaby reached them. I saw stars die and be reborn, each moment accompanied by the same haunting tune. When the vision passed, I was on my knees, gasping. Around me the squad writhed in agony, blood dripping from ears and eyes. The song ended abruptly, replaced by a silence so profound it felt like drowning. Then a whisper slid through the void, cold and intimate. Sleep, and Ryan, still held in Var's trembling arms, opened his blackened eyes and began to sing the lullaby in a perfect innocent child's voice. Ryan's small innocent voice filled the chamber, cutting through the oppressive silence like a blade through flesh. It was pure, unbroken and heartbreakingly familiar, a perfect echo of the lullaby that had stalked us since we boarded the merciful set. The skeletons vibrated in harmony, their jaws moving in flawless unison, as though they were instruments being played. The sound pressed against my skull, smothering rational thought, wrapping around my mind like a shroud. Hold him, I snarled, forcing the words past my clenched teeth. Var's arms tightened around Ryan's thrashing body, but the boy was impossibly strong now, muscles straining with a strength that wasn't his own. His blackened eyes rolled back and forth as if searching for something beyond the veil of reality. Drix staggered forward, his optics stuttering with static bursts. This is not possession, he rasped. It is projection. He is broadcasting memories, not his own. Before I could demand an explanation, my vision blurred. The world around me dissolved, the chamber melting away like smoke until I stood in a different place entirely. I was aboard the ship, but it was whole again, its corridors bright and clean. I heard laughter, human laughter, mingled with prayers spoken in reverent tones. Crew members bustled about, carrying supplies, their faces alive with purpose. Imperial hymns rang clearly through the vox, untainted and orderly. For a heartbeat I felt hope. Then the scene shifted. I was in a laboratory deep within the vessel. Red-robed adepts of the Mechanicus stood around a circle etched into the deck with sacred oils and blood. At its center were rows of sleeping crew, bound to cots, their chests rising and falling in eerie synchron. Wires and tubes connected them to humming machinery, and a colossal vox emitter towered overhead, its surface covered in glyphs. I couldn't read. The lead adept turned, and though his face was obscured by a brass mask, I could feel his ambition radiating like heat. His voice was metallic and exultant. We will harness the unbounded power of the Immaterium. Dreams are the purest form of thought, untouched by logic or doubt. By weaving them together, we shall shape the warp itself into obedience. The sleepers twitched, their mouths moving silent. The adepts began to chant, their Benharic hymns merging with the hum of the machinery. The sound built to a crescendo, growing unbearable. I saw the first sleeper's eyes snap open. Blackness spilled out like liquid night, spreading across his face as he screamed a lullaby in perfect childlike pitch. The others followed, their screams harmonizing into a terrible song that rattled the chamber. The machinery convulsed, panels sparking wild. Warp light bled through reality in jagged fractures. The brass-masked adept staggered back shouting orders, but it was too late. From the collective dream of the sleepers, something formed. I couldn't see it clearly, only the impression of vastness, a presence both motherly and monstrous. It reached through the tier between realms, drawn by the lullaby, and in that instant I understood the terrible truth. They hadn't merely called to the warp, they had given it shape. The crew thrashed, their bodies snapping apart as though reality itself rejected them. Their blood spread in symmetrical patterns across the floor, forming runes identical to those we'd seen etched in ash. The vision shattered. I staggered back into the present, gasping, my chest heaving like I'd been drowning. Around me, the squad lay scattered, some groaning, others deathly still. Var knelt, clutching his head, blood streaming from his ears. Lauren curled on the ground, whispering prayers over and over, his voice raw. Drix was on his knees, his mechadendrites twitching spasmodically. I saw it, he croaked. The origin. This ship was not transporting cargo or pilgrims. It was an experiment. They sought to weaponize dreams, to command the warp through the subconscious. His optics flickered. They succeeded. Ryan's voice continued to sing, unbroken and pure. As I turned toward him, his song shifted mid-note, flowing into a perfect recitation of my childhood memories. The exact words my mother had sung to me in the barracks on my homeworld, down to the tremor in her voice. I froze. How? My throat constricted. How do you know? Ryan's mouth curved into a smile that wasn't his. Because you dreamed it once, he said in my mother's exact tone. Var shouted, his voice panicked. Lieutenant, look. I followed his gaze to the far side of the chamber. The altar's bone patterns were rearranging again, faster this time, forming intricate shapes that resembled star maps. Drix scanned the shifting symbols, his voice rising in mechanical terror. It's plotting a course. The ship is navigating on its own. The deck beneath us lurched, throwing several men to the ground. The low hum became a steady, rhythmic pounding like a colossal heartbeat. Through the bulkheads came a sound like tearing fabric, followed by a deep guttural exhale. The temperature spiked, sweat running down my face beneath the helmet. Var's voice cracked over the vox. So, we're moving. The ship's engines are online. The hull vibrated violently as the choir of skeletons began to rattle again, their song merging with Rain's voice into a single overwhelming harmony. I grabbed Drix by the shoulder, shouting to be heard. Where is it taking us? His optics burned crimson. To the coordinates Keller carved into his flesh, a world unmarked on any imperial chart. The chamber tilted as the vessel descended into the void, and in that moment, the lullaby swelled until it drowned out everything else, promising that what lay ahead was not salvation, only awakening. The descent was like being swallowed whole. The ship's groans grew into a deep resonant wail that vibrated through the bulkheads, and into our bones. Emergency lights strobed crimson, flickering across faces drawn tight with terror. No one spoke. There was no need. The lullaby had risen again, drowning out rational thought, a wordless promise of rest and oblivion. Through a viewing port I saw the dead world rising to meet us. At first it seemed like nothing but endless black dunes stretching to the horizon, but as we drew closer, the dunes shifted. Whole sections of the landscape moved like the muscles of some buried beast. Columns of ash spiraled upward into the atmosphere, churning and falling again in a ceaseless cycle. My stomach clenched at the sight. This world should be barren, Drix rasped, his voice distorted by static. Scans indicate no tectonic activity, no wind patterns capable of generating this level of disturbance. It is not weather. Lauren's voice broke over the vox. Then what the hell is it?
The tech priest's optics flickered, then dimmed. It is the planet breathing. The ship shuddered as landing struts deployed. The hull screamed as we settled into the ash sea, sending waves of black dust rippling outward. For a moment silence reigned. Then the ground beneath us shifted, almost imperceptibly, as though something vast and unseen had acknowledged our arrival. "Status check," I ordered, forcing my voice to remain steady. Var and Lauren responded with tight, clipped affirmative. Ryan gave no reply, though his lips still moved silently, forming words only he could hear. "Magos," I said, "tell me we can leave this rock if things go bad." Drix hesitated. "Engines are operational but not under my command. I can attempt a manual override, though success is unlikely." That was all the answer I needed. "We find whatever this is, destroy it, and pray the Emperor grants us a way out." The ramp descended with a hiss of escaping pressure. A wave of heat and ash-laden air rolled in, thick enough to clog the filters of our respirators. Visibility dropped to a few meters, our helmet lamps cutting narrow tunnels through the swirling glue. Each step sank into the soft surface, with a muted crunch, releasing faint whispers that faded almost as soon as they began. At first I thought the whispers were my imagination. Then Lauren froze beside me, his weapon trembling. "Sir," he said hoarsely, "did you hear that? It said my name." "Keep moving," I ordered. "Ignore it." But as we advanced, the whispers multiplied, overlapping into a susurrus of voices, some pleading, some weeping, others laughing with terrible mirth. I realized with a chill that they weren't carried on the wind. They came from the ash itself. Shapes emerged through the haze. Towers, half buried and crumbling, rose like the teeth of some vast predator. Their surfaces were carved with countless open mouths, frozen mid-scream. Some mouths were human, others bestial, and some so alien my mind recoiled from their form. The structures vibrated subtly, humming in time, with the lullaby that still throbbed in our ears. Var muttered a prayer under his breath, his voice shaking. "This isn't natural. This is a graveyard built to sing." "No," Drix corrected flatly, "not a graveyard, an amplifier." We approached the nearest tower. The ash beneath it trembled, rippling outward like water disturbed by a dropped stone. I raised a fist, signaling the squad to halt. My breath came in short, sharp gasps. The ground erupted. A sinkhole opened beneath Lauren, swallowing him waist-deep before anyone could react. His scream cut through the vox as Var lunged forward, grasping his flailing arms. I joined him, straining to pull, but the ash had a grip like liquid concrete, dragging Lauren down inch by inch. "Hold on," I roared. "Don't let go." Lauren's visor slammed against mine, his eyes wide with pure animal terror. "Sir, it's pulling me under. There's something." His words dissolved into a wet gurgle as he was yanked down complete. Var screamed his name, plunging his hands into the shifting blackness, but there was nothing to grasp. The ash sealed over instantly, leaving only silence and the faint whisper of the lullaby. I dragged Var back, forcing him to his knee. "He's gone," I said harshly, though the words tore at my throat. "We can't save him. Stay focused or we all die." He didn't respond, only stared at the ground where Lauren had vanished. Drix scanned the area, his mechadendrites quivering. "Life signs detected." "Many life signs," he said, his tone clipped and mechanical. "Beneath the surface, countless entities moving in unison." "Define entities," I demanded. "They do not conform to biological norms," Drix replied. "Some are large, some are very small. All are connected." Before I could process that, the humming intensified, so loud it rattled my teeth. The towers began to shake, their carved mouths vibrating in perfect rhythm. The ground beneath us bucked violently, throwing us to the ash. Through the swirling haze, I saw movement, massive shapes rising from beneath the dunes. At first they resembled colossal statues, their outlines jagged and wrong. Then they shifted, revealing themselves to be alive. They were not machines, nor entirely their forms blurred at the edges, like half-remembered nightmares given shape. Dozens of open mouths stretched across their bodies, all singing the same lullaby. The sound became unbearable. My vision blurred, blood streaming from my nose. Ryan began to laugh, a high, childlike giggle that chilled me to the core. Var staggered to his feet, weapon raised. "Sir, what are your orders?" The creatures did not advance. They simply stood, their countless mouths harmonizing, as though welcoming us. Then, without warning, the ash beneath our feet shifted again, and the nearest tower tilted forward, its carved mouths opening wider. From deep within it came a sound like a colossal intake of breath. Drix's voice crackled over the vox, raw with stat. "Lieutenant, the towers are calling the ship. They are harmonizing with its engines. As if to confirm his words, the ground erupted once more, and in the distance, the merciful saint rose from the dunes like a leviathan, answering its master's song. The sight of the merciful saint rising from the dunes froze me in place. Its vast hull, blackened and broken, ascended as though pulled by invisible strings, ash cascading from its flanks like the shedding skin of some titanic beast. The towers' mouths vibrated violently, harmonizing with the ship's engines in a single suffocating note. My vox crackled with static that tasted like blood in my mouth. "Magus," I shouted over the deafening resonance. "Tell me what I'm seeing." Drix's voice was almost lost in the cacophony, his binharic chants fragmenting into panicked shrieks. "The vessel, it is responding to a summoning protocol. These towers are not architecture, they are conduits. They are singing to it." Before I could reply, the ground beneath us trembled violently, and a section of ash collapsed inward, revealing a gaping chasm. Heat blasted upward, reeking of scorched metal and decay. The lullaby swelled, emanating not from the ship above or the towers around us, but from somewhere far below. Var staggered back from the pit's edge. "So, we can't stay out here. If those things attack, they're not attacking." I cut him off, forcing my mind to focus. The creatures with the countless mouths had not advanced even a step. They stood like sentinels, their song merging with the deeper melody rising from below. A terrible realization struck me. They weren't guardians, they were choir members. "Inside," I ordered. "We go." Var's head snapped toward me, eyes wide. "Down there. Are you insane?" I grabbed his shoulder, shoving him toward the edge. "Whatever's down there is controlling all of this. If we destroy it, maybe we have a chance to survive. Now move." There was no time for argument. The ash crumbled further, forming a sloping tunnel into the darkness beneath the dunes. With weapons raised and helmet lamps cutting narrow beams of light, we descended. The temperature increased with every step, sweat pooling beneath my arm. The walls here were not natural stone or sand, but a seamless fusion of both, shaped into flowing curves that pulsed faintly like veins beneath skin. The further we went, the more the air seemed to hum, the vibrations resonating through our bone. The lullaby shifted subtly, no longer a simple melody, but an intricate harmony of countless voices. Some were high and sweet, others deep and guttural. The combined sound was almost unbearable, a constant pressure against the mind. Ryan began to giggle again, the sound thin and broken. "She's so close," he whispered, "so close to waking up." Var snarled and shook him. "Shut him up before I leave him," I snapped. "He's a conduit now. What he says might matter." The tunnel opened abruptly into a cavernous chamber. My first thought was that we had entered some unholy temple. My second was that we were inside something alive. The walls were smooth and curved, glistening with moisture. Faint ridges ran along their surfaces, expanding and contracting like breathing muscle. Bioluminescent veins pulsed beneath the skin-like surface, casting a sickly glow that barely reached the high, vaulted ceiling. The heat here was oppressive, a stifling wet warmth that made my armor feel like a coffin. At the center of the chamber stood structures that defied classification. They resembled a cross between cathedrals and gestation pods, towering spires fused with organic sacs that throbbed in time with the lullaby. Shapes floated within the sacs, vague silhouettes that twitched and shifted as if dreaming. Drix's voice was barely audible, trembling with mechanical static. "This is a cradle world, forbidden Mechanicus experiments, sites where failed attempts to birth stable warp entities were entombed and erased from record." Var stared at him, horrified. "You're telling me this whole planet is one giant wound?" "Yes," Drix rasped, "and it has never truly died." As we advanced, I noticed the floor was covered with a thin layer of ash mixed with something wet and dark. With each step, faint whispering rose from beneath, as though thousands of voices were buried just below the surface. The lullaby swelled again, and the sacs hanging from the spires pulsed brighter. Through the murky membrane of one, I saw a face press outward, human, mouth open in a silent scream. Then it sank back into the fluid. Lauren's breath hitched over the vox. "Sir, Emperor, save us. Those aren't their people. Not anymore," Drix corrected, his optics flared. "They are fragments of a gestalt consciousness, fuel for her awakening." As if responding to his words, the chamber began to tremble. Portions of the walls shifted, closing off the tunnel behind us, with a wet sucking sound. "We're trapped," Var said, his voice breaking. "No," I said, forcing calm. "There has to be another way out. We find it, we destroy whatever's at the heart of this, and we get to the surface." The floor quaked violently, throwing us to our knees. Ryan stood unharmed, his blackened eyes gleamed. His voice cut through the roar with perfect clarity, singing the lullaby in a slow, deliberate rhythm. The sacks around us responded instantly, their movements syncing with his song. The shapes within began to writhe violently, their outlines growing sharper and more grotesque. Drix's mechadendrites lashed wildly. She hears him. The song is accelerating the birthing process. Var raised his weapon, aiming at the nearest sack. Then we kill them now. Wait, I snapped, though my own finger itched on the trigger. If we fire without understanding, we could trigger. The entire chamber convulsed, cutting me off. A massive fissure split open at the far end, revealing a deeper darkness. From it came a sound like a colossal heartbeat, steady and terrible. The lullaby shifted again, this time joined by a second voice, low, resonant, maternal. It wasn't just sound anymore, it was command. The ground beneath us bucked, throwing us backward. When I looked up, the tunnel we had descended through was gone, sealed complete. Drix's optics dimmed to pinpricks of red light. Containment breach, he whispered. The nursery has awakened. And with that, every sack in the chamber tore open at once, spilling their contents onto the floor in a flood of steaming fluid and thrashing, half-formed things that screamed in perfect unison with the lullaby. The sound of the sacks tearing open was wet and obscene, like the ripping of flesh magnified 1,000-fold. Steam rolled across the chamber, thick and suffocating, carrying with it the smell of rot and burning incense. Shapes writhed in the haze, their bodies twitching and spasming as they dragged themselves free of the ruptured pods. They were not whole, not yet. Limbs ended in tapering strands of muscle, mouths opened and closed where no faces should be, and their skin gleamed translucent, slick with amniotic fluid that steamed on the hot ash-covered floor. Ryan's singing grew louder, more confident. His voice had become something unnatural, layered, impossibly resonant, as though countless voices were speaking through him. The creatures responded to his song, moving in perfect synchronization with every note. Their discordant movements began to align, forming a grotesque, undulating rhythm that turned my stomach. Var, fire, I roared. Var didn't hesitate. His rifle barked, bright muzzle flashes cutting through the steam. Bolter rounds punched into the nearest creature, tearing chunks of flesh and fluid into the air. It staggered, but didn't fall. Instead, the surrounding throng pressed closer, their twitching limbs reforming into something more stable, as if pain itself was shaping them into coherence. Keep shooting, Var bellowed, firing again and again, the chamber filled with the deafening roar of weapons fire. Drix added his own contribution, activating a plasma cutter from one of his mechadendrites, searing through the writhing mass with a blinding blue arc. The smell of burned meat filled the air and the creatures wailed in unison, a perfect mirror of Ryan's lullaby. Then, without warning, the wailing stopped. A single voice rose in its place. It was impossibly deep and resonant, so low I felt it more than heard. The sound thrummed through the floor, through my armor, through my very bones. My teeth rattled, my vision blurred as the bioluminescent veins in the walls flared to life, flooding the chamber with sickly pulsating light. The voice spoke a single word, children. The creatures froze, their twitching bodies going utterly still. Even Ryan stopped singing mid-note, his blackened eyes widening. He turned toward the fissure at the far end of the chamber, and sank to his knees. No, Var whispered, his voice breaking. No, no, no. From the fissure, something vast began to emerge. At first it was only a shadow, a darkness deeper than the cavern itself. Then I saw it for what it truly was, a form that defied the limits of perception. It was as though my mind could only grasp fragments at a time, a colossal silhouette of arms that became spires, a torso made of flowing ash and bone, a headless figure, crowned by a halo of shifting mouths. The voice of the mother was no mere sound now, it was a physical force. My body locked, my limbs trembling as though some unseen hand gripped me. Severin, it said, and though the voice was alien, the tone was unmistakably maternal. It was my mother's voice. My breath caught. That isn't real, but it felt real. It reached into my memories, plucking moments from my childhood, weaving them into its song. The smell of my mother's cooking, the warmth of her embrace, the lullaby she had sung to me as I drifted to sleep. All of it was here in this chamber, radiating from the thing that rose before us. Var screamed, tearing free of the invisible grip. He charged, emptying his rifle into the mother's vast form. The bullets vanished into the shifting ash, swallowed whole without effect. Var, no, I shouted, but my voice was drowned by the rising chorus. The mother spoke again, and this time the walls of the chamber seemed to breathe in unison. Do not fear, sleep. Sleep. Var's scream cut off mid-breath. His body went limp, collapsing to the floor like a discarded doll. The creatures moved instantly, swarming over him, their many mouths closing around his body with wet, tearing sounds. In seconds he was gone. Lauren let out a choked sob. Empress, save us. What is this thing? Drix's voice was mechanical and flat, stripped of its usual precision. A failed creation, a weaponized thought given flesh. She is not a daemon. She is a dream given voice. The mother's attention shifted to Drix. His mechadendrites froze mid-motion, spasming as if locked by external control. Slowly, against his will, he turned to face the fish. His monotone fractured into binary shrieks, as streams of data poured from his systems, projected into the air like cascading sigils of light. She's rewriting him, Lauren cried. I fired into the sigils, but the rounds passed harmlessly through, vanishing into nothing. Ryan rose to his feet, still swaying to the mother's rhythm. His small frame trembled, his mouth stretching wider than humanly possible as a second, deeper voice layered over his own. She dreams of unity, he intoned, though it was no longer Ryan speaking. She dreams of an end to division. We will be her choir, her children, her song. The chamber began to contract, walls folding inward like the closing petals of a vast flower. The heat intensified, until my armor's warning systems screamed. Lieutenant, Drix rasped through static, his voice briefly his own again. Destroy the central node. It is her tether to this reality. My gaze darted to the base of the fissure, where a massive growth of bone and metal jutted from the floor, pulsating in time with the mother's voice. I sprinted toward it, firing as I ran. Ryan's laughter followed me, high and terrible. The creatures surged to intercept, their malformed bodies twisting through the steam. Lauren covered me, screaming as he poured round after round into the hall. I reached the node and planted a melter charge, slamming my hand on the detonator. The floor beneath me shook violently as the mother's voice rose to a deafening pitch. Severin, she said again, softer now, almost tender. Why do you fight me? I am your first memory. For a heartbeat I faltered. Images of my childhood filled my vision, memories so perfect, so intimate, I almost believed them. Then the charge detonated. The node erupted in a blinding flash, molten shards raining down. The mother's form convulsed, her voice breaking into a wail that tore through flesh and metal alike. The creatures screamed in unison, collapsing into formless heaps. I stumbled back, deafened and half-blind, as the lullaby shattered into chaos. The mother was wounded, but she was not dead. And as the smoke cleared, I saw her vast shadow begin to rise again, her countless mouths opening wide to sing once more. The blast wave hurled me backward, tearing the breath from my lungs. My visor cracked as I slammed into the slick, pulsating wall. For a heartbeat, there was only the taste of blood and the ringing echo of the explosion. Then the wail of the mother filled the chamber, a sound so immense it seemed to bend reality itself. I staggered to my feet, weapon raised, blinking through the smoke and steam. The node was gone, reduced to molten fragments, yet the mother still loomed above, her vast shifting form writhing like a wounded leviathan. Her countless mouths opened and closed, releasing a fragmented chorus of cries, anguish, rage, and something far worse, sorrow.
The lullaby returned, broken and discordant now, as if sung by a choir tearing itself apart. My squad was scattered, silhouettes in the haze. Lauren crouched behind a collapsed growth of bone, firing blindly into the thrashing remnants of the creatures. Drix twitched on the floor, his mechadendrites spasming violently as streams of corrupted data bled from his systems. Then Rand's voice rose above it all, impossibly clear. "Lieutenant Severin," he said. But it was not Ran anymore. It was the mother speaking through him, her tone soft, coaxing, almost loving. "You hurt me, but you do not understand. You are part of me. You always have been." "No," I shouted, though my voice cracked under the weight of her presence. I fired at her towering form, the rounds vanishing into the shifting ash like stones into deep water. "You are nothing but a warp-born abomination." The mother laughed, a low, rumbling sound that made the floor quiver. "And yet you dream, Severin. You all dream. I am the song you hum in your sleep, the warmth you long for when the void is cold. I am your first breath and your last whisper." As she spoke, the walls of the chamber began to ripple, their bioluminescent veins forming patterns that hurt to look at. My vision swept. Suddenly the heat and stench were gone, replaced by the soft glow of a childhood room I had not seen in decades. I was home. The metal walls of the nursery were painted with crude depictions of imperial saints. My mother's voice drifted from somewhere close by, humming the same lullaby the mother had sung. The air smelled of oil and bread, familiar and comforting. For a moment I believed I had imagined everything. The ship, the choir, the nightmare below the dune. I turned, and there she was, my mother, smiling gently, her hands outstretched. "Severin," she said, her voice warm, perfect. "Come here, my son. You've been so far from home and you've fought for so long." My legs moved of their own accord, armor dissolving into nothing as I crossed the room barefoot. I reached for her, heart aching. Then something caught my eye. A small warped toy sat on the floor, its surface covered in jagged runes. I remembered it from my childhood, yet not like this. The runes shifted as I looked at them, forming the same symbols I had seen on the altar, the same coordinates Keller had carved into his flesh. The illusion cracked, the walls bled away into darkness, and my mother's warm smile stretched impossibly wide. Her skin peeled back, revealing rows of shifting mouths beneath. The lullaby surged, no longer soothing but suffocating, pressing against my skull until I wanted to scream. "You cannot deny me," the mother's voice boomed. "This dream is yours, Severin. I am you." I stumbled backward, my hands clutching my head. My own memories betrayed me, flickering like broken hololiths. Moments of my life replayed out of order. My first deployment, my oath to the Emperor, my mother's death, all bleeding into each other, until I could no longer tell which were real. Through the chaos, a single phrase rose above the din, spoken by my own voice. "Sleep, Severin, sleep, and be whole." I dropped to my knees, gasping. My weapon lay forgotten beside me. Part of me wanted to surrender, to sink into the warmth of that false home and never rise again. Then I heard another voice, faint but steady. "Lieutenant," it said. Lauren's voice. I forced my eyes open. Lauren knelt before me, blood streaking his face, his weapon clutched in trembling hands. "It's a lie," he rasped. "Fight it. You are here with us, not there." The illusion wavered. For a heartbeat I saw both worlds at once, the nursery and the nightmare. The mother roared, her countless mouths opening in fury. "He is mine." "No," I growled, forcing myself to my feet. I seized my weapon and fired point blank into the warped toy on the floor. The illusion shattered completely, fragments of false memory falling away like glass. I was back in the chamber. The mother reeled, her form flickering as if reality itself was rejecting. Ryan screamed, clutching his head, as black fluid poured from his eyes and mouth. "You would destroy your only sanctuary," the mother hissed, her voice trembling with rage. "I would destroy you," I spat. The chamber convulsed violently, and the fissure behind the mother widened into a yawning void. Through it I saw only endless darkness and countless shapes shifting just beyond sight, each singing a fragment of the lullaby. Drix's voice cut through the chaos, sharp and mechanical despite his broken systems. "Lieutenant, if she crosses fully into this plane, she will never be contained. You must sever her link now." "How?" I demanded. "The choir," he shouted. "Silence the choir, and she cannot sing herself into existence." I turned toward the skeletal figures embedded in the walls, their jaws still chattering in perfect rhythm. My heart pounded. There were hundreds, thousands of them. The mother's laugh shook the chamber. "Try, if you wish. Even silence is my song." I gritted my teeth, raised my weapon, and fired into the nearest row of skulls. The first shattered, then the next, a chain reaction of destruction spreading outward. The choir's song faltered, broken by screams of rage and despair. The mother shrieked, her vast form collapsing inward, her mouths twisting into grotesque silent shapes. But as she fell, she whispered directly into my mind, soft and intimate, "Severin, even if you kill me, you will never wake." The chamber split apart, the floor crumbling beneath my feet, and I plunged into the darkness, her words echoing endlessly in my ears. The fall felt endless, a plunge through weightless darkness. My stomach twisted as if gravity had been stripped away, yet I could feel something dragging me down, pulling me deeper. Around me, fragments of shattered bone and machinery spiraled, like dying stars, their faint glimmers illuminating flashes of the mother's broken form above. Her silhouette writhed, vast and terrible, suspended in the collapsing chamber. Though her mouths were silent now, I could feel her presence like pressure against my skull. her whispered promise echoing endlessly, "You will never wake." Then the darkness solidified beneath me. I struck the ground hard enough to drive the breath from my lungs, armor screaming in protest. My visor cracked fully, a spiderweb of fractures splitting my vision into jagged shards. I staggered upright, gasping, and realized I was standing ankle-deep in warm black liquid that steamed in the suffocating heat. The space around me was different, vaster, older. The walls were slick and organic, pulsating slowly like the inside of some titanic lung. Thin streams of ash fell continuously from above, spiraling down to vanish into the black pool beneath my feet. The lullaby was gone, replaced by a single low hum so deep it seemed to emanate from my own bones. Lauren stumbled into view, coughing, his armor scorched and cracked. His eyes were wide, wild with terror, but he was alive. Behind him, Drix crawled forward, his mechadendrites sparking erratically. One limb hung limp, severed wires trailing like torn sinew. "Lieutenant," Drix rasped, his voice a warbling mess of corrupted Binharik and words. We have descended into the birthing chamber. This is her core." I turned slowly, and my breath caught. At the center of the vast chamber rose a structure unlike anything we had seen before. It was not entirely mechanical, nor fully it pulsed with a rhythm like a heartbeat, towering spires of bone fused with warped metal, every surface inscribed with shifting glyphs that bled and reformed in an endless cycle. At its apex hung a single colossal sac, translucent and veined, inside which something massive stirred. The shape was indistinct, shifting constantly as though undecided on what form it wished to take. But one feature was constant, a great, yawning mouth that stretched impossibly wide, opening and closing in silent primal hunger. Drix's optics flared crimson. She is birthing herself anew. The destruction of the node above forced her into this phase prematurely. If she completes it, his voice faltered, broken into static bursts, this system will not merely fall, it will become her body. Lauren staggered backward, weapon trembling. "We can't fight that, sir. Emperor, help us. There's no way to fight that." I wanted to tell him he was wrong, to give him hope, but the words stuck in my throat, because deep inside, I knew he was right. The hum intensified, and the pool at our feet began to ripple. Figures rose from the black liquid, half-formed shapes like those we had seen before, but larger, more defined. Their mouths gaped silently, releasing streams of ash into the air as they crawled toward us. "Contact front," I shouted, raising my weapon. Lauren opened fire, screaming prayers as bolter rounds tore into the creatures. They fell, but for every one destroyed, two more emerged. The heat was unbearable now, waves of suffocating warmth radiating from the sack above. The smell of scorched flesh and metal filled my helmet. Drix staggered to my side, clutching a cracked data slate. "Lieutenant, the glyphs. They are not random, they are coordinates and frequencies, a birthing pattern. If disrupted, the process will collapse." "How?" I demanded, firing into the advancing horde. "Synchronization." Drix's voice rose to a shriek of static. "You must match the rhythm, and invert it." A counter-song. The realization struck like a blow. The lullaby had always been more than sound. It was structure, command, creation, and if it could create, it could also destroy. Rin's voice rang out behind me, clear and pure. I spun, heart lurching. He stood at the edge of the pool, untouched by the carnage, his eyes two pits of perfect black. His mouth moved, and the lullaby flowed forth, gentle, soothing, horribly beautiful. The creatures stilled, their bodies swaying in time with the song. Even Lauren faltered, his weapon lowering as his breathing slowed. Ren tilted his head, smiling with a child's innocence. "She's almost here, Lieutenant. She only needs one last push. Sing with us." "No," I shouted, forcing my mind to focus. "Drix, tell me the pattern." The tech priest's mechadendrites flailed, emitting screeches of Binharik as he calculated. At last, a fragmented chant emerged, a discordant inversion of the lullaby. I began to speak it, my voice raw and halting at first. The sound grated against the lullaby like a blade drawn across glass. The creatures hissed, their bodies convulsing. Ren's smile faltered, his song faltering for the first time. The sack above shuddered violently, the form within twisted, mouths snapping open and closed in agitation. Lauren rallied, his voice joining mine, ragged but defiant. Together, we forced the counter-song louder, drowning out Ren's melody. The mother screamed, It was not a sound but a physical force, a shockwave that hurled us to the ground. My vision blurred, ears bleeding. The chamber shook as fissures ripped through the walls, streams of ash erupting into the air. The sack split down the middle. From within, a single massive hand emerged, flesh and metal, interwoven, claws tipped with bone. The mother was forcing herself into reality, her birth accelerated by our defiance. Drix's voice cut through the chaos, urgent and final. Lieutenant, if she breaches fully, no counter-song will matter. You must destroy the cradle now. I looked to the towering structure. Glyphs blazed across its surface, their rhythm matching the mother's heartbeat. Cover me, I roared. Lauren opened fire, screaming curses as I charged. The creatures swarmed, but I smashed through them, every step fueled by desperation. I reached the base of the cradle, and slammed my last melter charge into its pulsing core. The mother's countless mouths all opened at once. Severin, she roared, a single, perfect note of rage and longing. I detonated the charge. The world became white fire and silent. When the sound returned, it was not the mother's song, but a single, piercing wail, the first cry of something vast and newborn. It rose and fell, shaking the planet, the towers, even the ship above. And then, as abruptly as it began, it stopped. I opened my eyes to see the sack collapsing inward, its form disintegrating into ash that fell like black snow. The creatures dissolved into nothing. The hum ceased. But the silence was not victory. It was the breath held before a scream yet to come. Because somewhere in that void of sound, I could still hear a whisper. Soft, loving, certain. Sleep, my children. I am not gone. I am only dreaming. The silence that followed was suffocating. It wasn't merely the absence of sound, but a void that pressed in from every direction, so complete it felt like the world itself had ceased to exist. My ears rang in the aftermath, a thin, trembling whine that only deepened the sensation of emptiness. I forced a breath into my lungs, the sound ragged, and too loud in my own helmet. The chamber was unrecognizable. Where moments ago there had been pulsating walls and the colossal birthing sac, there was now only ruin. The organic structures had withered to brittle husks, curling inward like burnt paper. Ash fell steadily from above, drifting down in a black snowfall that coated every surface. The pool had evaporated, leaving a cracked basin etched with warped glyphs that glimmered faintly before fading one by one into nothingness. I staggered to my feet, my armor scorched and pitted. Lauren lay nearby, groaning softly, his weapon still clutched in trembling hands. Drix was slumped against a fragment of the collapsed cradle, his optics dim and flickering, his mechadendrites twitching in broken, stuttering motions. Status, I croaked, my throat raw. Lauren coughed, rolling onto his side. Alive. His voice was a whisper, swallowed instantly by the oppressive stillness. Emperor's mercy, Lieutenant. What did we just do? I didn't answer. I didn't have the words. My gaze swept the chamber, searching for Rin, but there was no sign of him. Only the memory of his small, terrible smile lingered in my mind, sharper than any wound. Drix stirred, his voice distorted, fragmented between words and static. Containment, incomplete, pattern disrupted, but essence persists. I knelt beside him, his optics flared briefly, then dimmed again. The mother is not dead. She withdrew, dormant, dreaming. This silence, is her breath held? His mechadendrites spasmed once, then went still. You must leave before she exhaled. The ground trembled beneath us, a subtle vibration that crawled up my spine. The ash shifted like disturbed water. Lauren pushed himself upright, panic flashing in his eyes. Lieutenant, we need to move now. This whole place feels wrong. I helped Drix to his feet, though his weight was almost too much. Together, we stumbled toward the far end of the chamber, where a narrow passage had opened in the collapse. It was the only way out. As we moved, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The glyphs on the walls were gone, erased entirely, but faint outlines remained burned into the surface. When I brushed a hand across them, they crumbled like dried skin. The passage twisted upward, the air growing colder with each step. The silence deepened, becoming a physical thing, thick and heavy. My own heartbeat sounded distant, muted, as though even it were being swallowed. Lauren clutched his helmet, as if to keep his thoughts from leaking out. Sir, he whispered, though the word barely reached me. Do you hear? Nothing. I hear it.
I said grimly. We emerged onto the surface and froze. The towers were gone. The vast choir of mouths had crumbled into mounds of black ash. The sky above was a uniform, starless void, no longer lit by lightning or smoke. Even the merciful saint lay silent, grounded in the dunes like a dead leviathan. Its lights were extinguished, its engines cold. Lauren stumbled forward, falling to his knees. "It's over," he breathed, though the words sounded like a prayer spoken more out of desperation than belief. "No," Drix rasped, his broken voice carried in the oppressive stillness like a curse. "This is not victory. This is intermission." The ash beneath our boots shifted subtly. Faint depressions appeared, as if unseen hands were pressing upward from beneath the surface. The sensation of being watched was overwhelming, a pressure at the back of my skull that made my vision blur. "Back to the ship," I ordered. "We need to send a warning, mark this world, and purge it from all charts." Lauren didn't move. "Sir, look." I followed his gaze. Across the dunes, the ash was rising, sculpting itself into shapes, curved lines, intricate spirals, a massive sigil that spread outward in all directions. It was the same pattern I had seen in my false memories, the same pattern that had marked the cradle below. Drix's optics flared dimly. "It's rewriting itself," he said, each word labored. "The surface is becoming another choir." My stomach turned. "We destroyed the cradle." "You destroyed a cradle," Drix corrected. "But the mother, she is vast. She will sing again." The silence pressed harder, so absolute it seemed ready to crush us. I realized with dawning horror that it wasn't the absence of sound. It was a pause, a breath drawn in. The lullaby would return. I forced myself to move, dragging Lauren to his feet. "We run, now." We stumbled through the dunes toward the ship, the ash swirling silently around us. The sigils continued to grow behind us, stretching across the landscape like veins. When we reached the merciful saint, its ramp was already open, though no lights burned within. The interior was pitch black, the kind of darkness that seemed to have depth, like a bottomless ocean. As we stepped inside, a faint hum began to build, so low I almost mistook it for my heartbeat. Then, soft and impossibly close, a single note of the lullaby drifted through the dark. Lauren froze, eyes wide with terror. "Sir," he whispered, "tell me you heard that." I didn't answer. My grip tightened on my weapon as the silence broke, not with a scream, but with the first breath of a song that had never truly ended. The mother was still dreaming. The first note of the lullaby lingered in the dark, soft and trembling, and my heart clenched in my chest. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Even a whisper from the mother was enough to still our breath, to make the void inside the merciful saint feel alive. Lauren's hand tightened on my arm, his knuckles white beneath his cracked gauntlet. His breathing came in shallow gasps, and I could feel the tremor in his body through the armor. "Sir," he rasped, barely audible, we can't go back in there. The song's already inside." We're walking into its mouth. The hum deepened, vibrating through the deck plating beneath our boots. Drix staggered forward, one mechadendrite dragging uselessly behind him, his optics flickering like dying embers. "We must," he croaked. "The ship is the only vector capable of transmitting a warning beyond this system. If we leave it uncontrolled, the mother's signal will spread to the wider Immaterium. Whole sectors will dream with her." The image of worlds falling silent, their populations cradled in her song before being remade into part of her choir, cut through my hesitation. I grabbed Lauren by the shoulder and shoved him toward the ramp. "Move, whatever's inside." We cut through. The ramp groaned beneath our weight as we ascended. The darkness beyond wasn't merely the absence of light. It seemed thick, almost tangible, swallowing our helmet lamps, until they were little more than faint halos. Every breath echoed too loudly, every step answered by a soundless presence pressing closer. Inside, the ship was transformed. Where once there had been steel bulkheads and standard imperial fittings, now the walls pulsed faintly, a fusion of metal and organic matter. Strange runes crawled across the surfaces, forming and reforming like living things. The hum resonated through the corridor, building steadily toward the lullaby's first full verse. "Drix," I hissed, forcing my voice into the voxnet. "Where's the bridge? Can you get us control?" The tech priest shuddered, his remaining functional mechadendrites twitching, like severed nerves. "The bridge remains intact, but compromised. Systems are aligned to her rhythm now. We will need to break synchronization before issuing any command. Then break. His optics flared briefly. To do so, we must silence the core choir. It's below decks, Lauren swore under his breath. Not another one. We moved cautiously through the corridors. Every junction a potential ambush. Shadows shifted at the edge of vision, always retreating before our lights could catch them. Once, I thought I saw Rin's small figure standing at the far end of a passage, his head cocked, mouth open as if mid-song, but when I blinked, he was gone, leaving only drifting ash behind. The humming intensified as we descended toward the engine decks. The walls grew slick, warm to the touch, and the runes along their surface pulsed like veins beneath skin. The smell of iron and something sweetly rotten filled the air, clogging our filters. We reached the lower hold and froze. Hundreds of crew members stood in perfect rows, motionless, their eyes closed, their mouths moved silently, forming the lullaby without breath or sound. Each figure was connected by a web of glistening filaments that stretched back toward the engine core, converging in a mass of pulsating flesh and steel. The filaments throbbed in rhythm, spreading the mother's song throughout the ship. Emperor, Lauren whispered. They're part of it now, not people anymore, Drix corrected coldly. They are transmitters, living nodes. I gritted my teeth. We cut the lines, end them, end her reach. Lauren hesitated, weapon wavering. Sir, they look like they're sleeping. They're not, I said flatly, and opened fire. The first row collapsed under a storm of bolter fire. No screams, no resistance, just bodies crumpling like marionettes with their strings cut. The filaments recoiled, writhing like severed worms. The rest of the choir stirred, their eyes snapping open. Black fluid poured from their mouths as they turned in unison toward us. Contact, I roared. They surged forward, silent but relentless. Lauren fired wildly, his voice breaking into panicked prayer. Drix deployed his plasma cutter, carving through the tangled filaments even as they tried to latch onto his limbs. The air filled with the stench of burning flesh and ozone. As the last of the filaments severed, the hum faltered, dropping suddenly in. The choir collapsed all at once, their bodies twitching before lying still. The core mass writhed violently, emitting a pulse of energy that knocked us all to the ground. Synchronization broken. Drix gasped, his voice raw. We have control. Then I shouted, dragging Lauren upright. To the bridge, we sprinted through the corridors. The hum, replaced now by a different sound, a rising, furious scream. The ship shook violently, as if something massive clawed at its hull from outside. The lights flickered, and the walls buckled inward, leaving streaks of black ash in their wake. We reached the bridge just as the first verse of the lullaby returned, louder than before. It wasn't coming from the choir anymore, it was coming from the planet below. Through the viewing port I saw the dunes shifting, the sigils stretching outward to cover the entire surface. The towers were rising again, reforming from the ash in perfect unison. She's rebuilding herself. Lauren Drix slammed himself into the command throne, jacking his remaining limbs into the interface. His optics blazed with desperate light. I can lock her signal here, contain it within the system, prevent it from spreading, and us, I demanded. There will be no escape, Drix admitted. The mother's voice filled the ship, vast and tender. Children, she crooned, do not fight me, come home. Lauren's weapon clattered to the floor. Sir, maybe she's right. Maybe, if we just rest. I struck him across the helmet, snapping him back to clarity. Focus, soldier. The ship shuddered violently. Warning runes flared across the displays as the planet's surface split, revealing a swirling abyss beneath the dew. A chorus of voices rose from it, merging into a single, perfect note. Drix, I roared. Now, the tech priest screamed, his body arching as he forced the systems into lockdown. The displays went dark, and a wave of static rolled outward, severing the connection between ship and planet. The lullaby cut off mid-verse, leaving a silence so sharp it made my ears ring. For a moment, there was only stillness. Then the mother's voice returned, softer than before, drifting through the ship, like a lover's whisper. You cannot contain a dream, my child, she murmured. Dreams slip through every cage. The hull groaned, and a hairline crack spread across the viewing port. Drix's optics dimmed. Containment achieved. For now, I stared at the void beyond, heart pounding. For now, the silence that followed was worse than her song. It felt like waiting for the next breath, the next verse, and deep within that stillness, I knew she was listening. The crack in the viewing port spider-webbed outward with a sound like splitting bone. I froze, holding my breath, as the ship groaned beneath us, the metal straining as though the void itself were pressing inward. A faint hiss escaped from the rupture, a whisper so soft it might have been mistaken for escaping air, except it carried a rhythm, a half-formed note of the lullaby. Drix, slumped in the command throne, his remaining optics flickering weakly, smoke curled from the ports where his mechadendrites were fused into the interface, the stench of scorched oil and flesh filling the bridge. Containment. Stable. Signals suppressed within planetary orbit. She cannot spread beyond this world for now. Lauren's breath came in rapid, shallow gasps. His eyes darted to the viewport, then to the displays that no longer glowed with data, only static. We're trapped, he said, his voice breaking. No engines, no communications. Even if she can't reach out, no one will ever know what's down there. I swallowed hard, staring at the dying planet below. The surface shifted constantly, dunes flowing, like a living thing. The sigils we'd seen rising before now covered nearly every visible span of ground, forming a vast spiraling pattern that stretched beyond the horizon. It pulsed faintly, a heartbeat too slow to hear but impossible not to feel. She's not dead, I murmured. The words tasted like ash. No, Drix confirmed, his voice barely more than a vibration through his damaged Vox grill. The mother slumbers. This entire system is now her cradle, and you, Lieutenant, you are inside her dream. My hands clenched into fists. Then we wake her, I growled. Drix's failing optics flared once, faint, but resolute. No, to wake her is to bring her fully into our reality. You must understand, containment is victory. She cannot be killed, only starved. I stared at him, struggling to process the enormity of it. So we sit here, forever, guarding a sleeping god, waiting for her to stir again. Before Drix could answer, a low vibration rippled through the deck plates. Lauren stiffened, his weapon snapping up instinctively. What was that? The lights flickered, casting the bridge into stuttering shadows. Somewhere deep within the ship, a single drawn-out creak echoed like a groan of ancient timbers. Then faintly, impossibly, we heard a child's giggle, Raun's giggle. Lauren's breath caught. Emperor's blood. He's here. He's still here. The sound drifted through the corridors, weaving between the shadows. It wasn't just laughter. It was a thread of song, the opening note of the lullaby, playful and innocent. No, I whispered, my gut twisting. She's inside the ship. She never left. The viewport darkened, blotting out the view of the planet below. At first, I thought it was a systems failure. Then shapes began to move in the blackness, vague, shifting outlines that pressed against the glass from the other side. Countless mouths opened and closed in silent harmony, forming words we could not hear but could feel. The crack widened with a sharp, brittle sound. A thin trail of black fluid seeped through, beading like tears. Drix jerked violently in the command throne, his voice breaking into Binharic shrieks. She is testing the boundary. She seeks a new vessel.
Then we hold the line, I snapped. My weapon felt pitifully small in my hands, but I raised it anyway. The laughter grew louder, Ryan's voice now overlapping with countless others. It came from every direction, echoing through the ship's halls. The lights died completely, plunging us into darkness lit only by the crimson glow of emergency rooms. In that darkness, something moved. Figures emerged from the shadows, their bodies twitching unnaturally, jaws opening wider than bone should allow. Former crew, now fully claimed by the mother's dream. Their eyes were empty voids, their skin stretched thin and translucent, the web of filaments beneath glowing faintly like veins of molten gold. Contact front, Lauren screamed, opening fire. The corridor exploded with muzzle flashes, the recoil deafening in the close space. The creatures fell, but more surged forward, their movements perfectly synchronized with the rising tempo of the lullaby. Drix, I shouted over the chaos, seal this deck. The tech priest convulsed, sparks showering from his ruined implants. System control, compromised. She sings through me now. His voice shifted mid-sentence, deepening into something soft, tender, achingly familiar. Severin, the mother cooed through him. You fought so hard. Let go. Come home. I fired point blank into the throne. Drix's body slumped, the connection severed in a burst of sparks and blood. The lullaby faltered for a heartbeat, the creatures staggering in confusion. Now Laurent, I bellowed. He hurled a frag grenade down the corridor. The explosion tore through the mass of bodies, filling the air with smoke, and a stench so foul it burned my throat. We bolted for the auxiliary control station. Without Drix's expertise, it was our only hope. The hallway shuddered violently as something vast struck the ship from outside. The lullaby surged again, louder, angrier. The control station door loomed ahead, sealed and pristine. I slammed the override, and we stumbled inside. Consoles flickered to life, displaying streams of corrupted data interspersed with fragments of song notation. Laurent collapsed against the wall, gasping, "Tell me you know what to do." I stared at the controls, my mind racing. There was no saving us, no saving the ship, but we could make sure nothing ever left this system. We burn it, I said. We burn the whole damn system. Laurent's eyes widened. Sir, that'll kill us too. Better us than the galaxy. I keyed in the final command sequence. The ship's reactors screamed to life, a rising note that harmonized with the lullaby outside. The two sounds clashed, building toward a crescendo that made my vision blur. The viewport cracked wide open, and for an instant I saw the mother's true form, vast and beautiful and terrible beyond comprehension. 1,000 mouths opened as one, singing the final verse. Then the reactors went critical. Light consumed everything. In that blinding moment I heard her last whisper, gentle as a lullaby sung to a sleeping child. Even Ash dreams, Severin, and I will dream of you. When the light faded, there was only silence. A silence that was not peace, but the pause before the next song began.